This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
The pearly gates have opened. Welcome in.
Well, this is going to be a heavenly episode.
Yes, it is. About, well...
It's not, but...
Heavenly in terms of production quality.
Okay.
Quality of research.
Of course.
But the contents...
Yeah.
Of what this show's about, or what this episode's about, not heavenly at all. In fact, quite the opposite.
Hellish, baby.
But, Mo, go ahead and give them all the opening fluff.
Of course. Just to keep you all updated so you know, of course, you can follow us on all sorts of social media platforms. You know, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. We're all at Creep Street Podcast. Twitter, we're at Creep Street Pod. And if one episode a week is not enough for you, and I know that it's not...
That's right.
So, like, if I know that it's not enough for you, then, like, you should know that it's not enough for you either.
I mean, God,
you know?
Do we gotta wipe your ass for you, too?
Seriously. You know what I mean? It's
we
like,
gotta turn on the bidet? I mean, what are we, what's the deal?
What's the deal? Speaking of, would love a bidet. Tushy, if you're listening, let's collab, let's do something.
Hey, let's do a sponsorship with Tushy.
We would do it. Anyway, going back to the whole needing, you know, more than one episode a week situation, we have the solution to that issue, okay? And you can find it over at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. And there you will find all sorts of wonderful bonus content. We've got movie commentaries, movie reviews, short stories, interviews, conversations, you know, spoiler casts, full bonus episodes, and anything and everything in between.
Yes.
Big time exciting stuff happening over there. So once again, you can check that out at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Now, Dylan, last week we were in Scotland for a little spookiness.
That's right. Yes, the Grey Man of Ben Macdouey.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in for that one. We so appreciate it. And you know, if you were a fan of the ep, share it on social media. Tell a friend about it. Tell your mom about it, for Christ's sakes. Spread the good word. And thanks to everyone who listened, of course. But
yes.
But Dylan, what are we doing this week? What's going on?
Well, this week, for the, I think, third time in Creep Street history, we are headed over to the wonderful Philippines.
Oh, very exciting.
To discuss a very dark and demonic story.
Oh, okay. What's going on?
Folks, buckle up, get your passports, call Mateo, because this week we are talking about the possession of Clarita Villanueva. Well, Creep Street, it's been a while since we've covered a possession story, and boy, do we have one for you now. From as far as I can tell, this tale is one that is not well known in the United States. But ask anyone in the Philippines and they will know very well the strange and harrowing tale of Clarita. As stated, this is a story of a possession. But there are aspects to this particular case that make it stand out from most others. We are so happy to be returning to the Philippines again because outside of the United States, it happens to be one of our biggest listener base.
Yes, we love our listeners in the Philippines. Thank you for being strong since the beginning, really.
That's right. Now, the most horrifying of these events happened in 1953 from roughly May 9th to May 18th. Clarita was a young 17-year-old girl living in Manila, Philippines. During this time, the poor girl was terrorized by two entities that only she could see. This story was so insane that even the mayor of Manila, a Mr. Arsenio Lacson, publicly claimed its veracity. Now, from what I understand, Clarita grew up in the streets of Manila. She did not have a father, or at least I don't know if he had passed or just wasn't in her life, but she grew up without a father. She was raised solely by her mother, and since the day she was born, the supernatural just seemed to orbit her constantly. What little money her mother and her had, her mother made from working as a psychic, holding seances and telling fortunes in their rundown home.
Ooh, interesting.
It wasn't much, but it was enough to get by. But as hard as life had already been for the young Clarita, she was dealt another cruel blow when at the age of 12, her mother passed away.
Oh my God.
With no one to look after her, the poor young Clarita began to roam the streets working as a prostitute.
Jesus Christ.
And what is also called a taxi dancer. I had never heard of this term before, and here's the definition according to Collins Dictionary. A taxi dancer is a girl or woman employed as by a dance hall to dance with patrons who pay a fee for each dance and for a set period of time. Obviously, your heart immediately goes out to this poor girl.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds horrible.
But things were about to get even worse, and it would mean the beginning of one of the strangest paranormal cases in the history of the Philippines.
And that's saying something.
And that's saying something, folks, because as we know in past episodes we've done, this is a culture that is rich with supernatural entities and legends. I mean, it's incredible.
And people are just, as far as I can tell, are just more accepting of the belief in the paranormal and the supernatural right away.
Absolutely.
Or just more than most people in the U.S., I would say, or at least willing to outwardly say.
Right.
Yeah, so this is really saying something because people are into it over there, and in a good way, and I'm happy about it. But yeah,
absolutely. Well, given that Clarita was finding work as a prostitute, it's no surprise she often hung around bars as a way to catch the eye of male clientele. In May of 1953, at the age of 17, she was arrested when one man she thought was a potential client turned out to be a policeman.
Oh yeah, oh my God, I literally could pop off about this for hours, so I'm just not, but just know that I'm pissed.
Well, she was charged with the crime of vagrancy and prostitution, and despite being only 17, Clarita was sent to endure her wait for the trial at the notorious Bilibid Prison, otherwise known as the Manila City Jail. To sort of paint you a picture of this prison, the jail itself was like a 300-year-old fortress-like structure with a well-known violent history. And it also had a bad reputation for being haunted as well. And I just have to take a second to say how tragic of a life. Like, what an awful, you lose your mother, then you have no parents at the age of 12. I mean, what an awful, but your heart immediately goes out to this girl.
Yeah, I mean, society failed her, and then they punish her and hold her hostage, basically, because she did what she needed to do so she would survive.
Right.
Like, it's insane to me that this kind of stuff happens. And I'm not just admonishing the Philippines. This type of thing happens everywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
But, like, it's sick. It's so fucking sick.
For sure. But as terrifying as this prison was, they were about to become even more afraid of her.
Oh, okay. I know that's probably a negative, but it sounds like a positive, and I like that they have to deal with her, these fucking assholes.
It all began one night when the jail was shaken awake by the sound of Clarita screaming, an absolutely unearthly, blood-curdling scream. This unnatural wailing caught the attention of the guards, and they came running to see what the heck was going on. When they got to her cell, they found her cowering in fear, blood all over her. They found that she had been bitten on various parts of her body, and the location of many of these bite marks were in places where she simply just could not have done it herself. Or, where her mouth would not have been able to reach.
Right. Oh, God.
The guards tried to calm her down enough so that she could tell them what had happened. She claimed she had been attacked by strange phantoms, one of which she described saying, quote, "A very big, dark man with curly hair all over his body." And the other smaller one she described as, quote, "an angelic face and a big mustache." Of course, there had been no one else in the tiny, dirty cell with her. There was no way anyone could have just waltzed in and out of that cell. The guards were stumped and just assumed that she was having some sort of panic attack, and they just left her in her cell to scream herself hoarse.
Oh, God.
Well, over the coming week, Clarita was continually attacked by unseen forces, and it was freaking out the other inmates. Often they would report seeing her writhe around on the floor and get tossed around her cell like someone was violently throwing her. And yet, there was no one else they could see in there with her. The violence and utter bizarre nature of these episodes only escalated to the point that it was brought to the attention of the mayor himself, the man I mentioned earlier, then mayor of Manila, Arsenio Lacson. He was taken by these supernatural stories surrounding this young girl being held at the prison. So, he had Clarita brought to his office to be examined by medical professionals, and one of these was the chief medical examiner, a man named Mariano Lara. The moment she arrived, everyone in attendance knew that they were dealing with something that was beyond just a mere medical or psychological condition. Clarita almost immediately went into another episode, writhing around, tossing herself around the room in a way that just didn't seem like she was doing it. The ferocity at which she was being thrown, it didn't look like she was leaping. You know what I mean? It looked like something was literally picking her up and tossing her.
Wow, that is so scary. And we have touched on paranormal activity or hauntings in prisons before.
Yeah.
But I think in the future we should do more of a deep dive into haunted prisons and stuff, because it makes sense that a place like that would be haunted.
I mean, we got one of the most famous prisons, Alcatraz, right here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, which is just one among many, and not just in the United States, but around the world, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So it was all the medical staff could do to just try and hold her down. Finally, they were able to get her down and restrained, and that is when true horror set in. Everyone in the room, the mayor and the medical personnel alike, watched in utter terror as vicious bite marks began to appear on the young woman's skin.
Oof.
As if she was actively being bitten right there in front of their eyes. Some of the bite marks even appeared beneath the hands of the people who were restraining her. For example, the mayor himself claimed she could not have been making these bite marks, as he watched one appear on her neck, and while he was holding her hand, a bite mark appeared on one of her fingers that was underneath his hand.
Oh.
So it couldn't have happened. She couldn't have done it. He was holding her hand, nor could anyone else in the room have done it.
Right, yeah.
All the while, poor Clarita is screaming and wailing in just an utter state of fear and agony. She said that the entities were laughing and taking turns biting her. She would go from screaming one second to giggling the next, as if someone was tickling her.
Huh, okay, that's so creepy.
So creepy.
I hate that.
On one occasion, witnesses present witnessed Clarita make a motion like she was grabbing someone or something by the hair and pulling it hard. They soon found in her hand a wad of thick, straight black hair. But when they looked at it closer, it was clear the hair hadn't come from Clarita's head, and it perfectly matched the description she had given of one of the entities.
Oh, okay.
Mayor Lacson would later be quoted saying, "What it is beyond me. This is something that goes way back to the dark, dim past." Meaning this is something primordial. This is something pre-human.
I mean, that'll get you.
Ugh.
That is some Yikes. Yeah, that creeps me out. No, I don't know. There's just something about it saying that it's like it's been here for, thousands of years before humans were here, and that it's just...
Yeah.
I don't know, it's been waiting. I don't know. That stuff really scares me.
And Mayor Laxon has even said his medical examiner, his chief medical examiner, Mariano Lara, was not a superstitious man in the least. But even Lara was quoted saying,
"I've always thought of this world as a visible thing, but here is something unknown, a force unseen yet felt."
Okay.
Well, some time passes and eventually Clarita's episode subsides. She had calmed down enough now that folks were able to begin asking her questions about the bewildering sights they had just beheld. The mayor presented her with a pencil and paper, asking her to draw the entities that were doing this to her. But every time she attempted to do so, the pencil would fly out of her hand and across the floor. And everyone saw this happen. It wasn't like she was throwing the pencil. According to some reports, Clarita was even compelled to shove the paper in her mouth and eat it. And whenever this happened, she was unable to remember why. Everyone in attendance was blown away by what they were witnessing, so Clarita was sent to be examined again by another team of doctors and psychiatrists. Here is what is interesting. After examining her, they found her to be mentally sound. And keep in mind, they all saw these weird episodes firsthand. They saw Clarita writhe and toss about. They all saw the nasty bite marks appear on her skin before their very eyes. This is why it's so astonishing that they found her to be mentally sound.
Yeah.
As I said, this was clearly not a medical or psychological issue. While all this was happening, the story was beginning to hit the press. In fact, Clarita apparently had one of these violent episodes right in the middle of a press conference full of hundreds of journalists and medical folks.
Oh, damn.
Soon, it would be all over the newspapers, and it just so happened to catch the attention of a Protestant pastor named Lester Sumrall. He would later chronicle what he saw in a book he would write about his work with Clarita, entitled The True Story of Clarita Villanueva. And here is an excerpt.
"These strange demonic bitings began to occur daily, baffling all who saw it. Dr. Lara, the prison physician, appealed for help through the media and permitted many to view the strange phenomenon. Filipino, Chinese, and American doctors, university professors, and other professionals were called in to analyze the situation. The news media soon caught wind of the occurrence and sent reporters out to investigate. The newspapers, radio stations, and magazines found it their kind of story and began to publicize it. Even the cartoonists were soon drawing pictures of the entities from Clarita's descriptions, as the bitings continued day by day. The UPI and other world news services began to report the phenomenon worldwide. In my travels throughout the world, I have not been in any country in which the newspapers did not give this story front-page coverage. Switzerland, France, Germany, England, Canada, the United States. Everywhere this strange phenomenon was front-page news at the time."
So as we know, the second examination happened in front of a huge group of people, of medical personnel and journalists and nurses and doctors and whatnot. Despite the absolute insanity of what was happening before people's very eyes, of course, there were those who were determined to find a rational explanation for what was going on with the young Clarita.
I mean, yeah.
Two of these folks looking for reason were a Dr. Zaguier and a Dr. Gaduco, both of whom were from the National Center for Mental Health. Dr. Zaguier would apparently prick Clarita with pins, and she would show no response to it. When speaking to Dr. Gaduco, Clarita apparently told him that she was being, quote,
"punished by a very big, dark, hairy, handsome man who tells me to do things. I see him often, morning, noon, and night."
Hairy but handsome.
I was just going to say, interesting that he's handsome.
My God.
But in a way, I can see it. You know what I mean? Because often we kind of think as demons and devils as, these like gnarly, scary, like, goat motherfuckers.
No, they could look like Tom Selleck.
Yeah, come on.
Hairy but handsome.
I was just thinking about Tom Selleck.
Get out of here, Magnum P.I.
I was just thinking, you know what? Courtney Cox was young for him in Friends, but they seemed happy.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, these devils, these demons, they also have to be powerful and tempting.
I guess so.
And I think, I don't know, I see how the handsomeness comes in. It almost makes it worse because you're
right.
It kind of messes with your head. You're like, why do you look this way, but you're the worst? And this has real life implications, clearly.
And I think the other entity, though, she described as being quite ugly.
Yeah.
But the descriptions of these things vary a lot, too, as well, depending on the source.
Yeah, they might be changing it up. Like, literally, the entities might look different throughout this experience.
That's actually a very good point. So these two rational doctors, after some examination, they claim that Clarita was experiencing a particular nervous disorder called heretical fugue, or sometimes called hysteria psychoneurosis. This, they claimed, was what was causing this discoloration of the skin, and that everyone else was mistaking that discoloration for bite marks.
Oh.
The doctors claimed that if given enough time, they could cure Clarita of what was ailing her. But Chief Medical Examiner Mariano Lara, who was present for the events that happened in the mayor's office, sternly disagreed with him. Others, of course, claim that Clarita was simply just putting on an act, or that it was some kind of a sleight of hand or magic trick.
They're always thinking that.
They claim that this was her attempt to escape her abysmal life by getting attention. Look.
Yeah.
First of all, let's say that that's the case.
Yeah, then, yeah.
I would be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I might not be doing it the same way, but I'd at least be starting a podcast.
Yeah, come on. Seriously.
I mean, come on. Don't we all try to escape from the... Now, obviously, we are very grateful we have not had to, we have not had the lives of young Clarita.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jesus.
that's awful. But it's like, so you're going to hold it against this 17-year-old girl who lost both her parents, had to work in the street? You're going to hold that against... Like, fuck off.
Yeah, it's like she's been living a life full of CSA, and you just think that it's, like, fine to just be like, she's being obnoxious. This is attention-seeking behavior.
Yeah.
It's so classic of, like,
Okay.
blaming her. It's like, even if there are no actual demons and she's not being possessed and she's doing this, like, she clearly needs help.
She clearly needs help.
And she hasn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe you should just fucking help her.
Yeah.
It's in this, like...
It's not like this is some rich kid living in Beverly Hills that's,
Yeah.
like, pretending on TikTok to have,
Yeah.
This is like, what the fuck are you talking about?
This is the shit that it makes me so angry. Like, so many, there's a lot of things like this that I feel, but like this one, it's like, in some situations, doing the right thing, it's like so easy. It's
Yeah.
not hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys are consciously and purposefully choosing to not help her, or to not do the right thing, or to not really be there for her.
Exactly.
Like, it's not hard to be there for her. It's not hard to care for her. It's not hard to help her.
Exactly.
Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it's like if that seems like a absolutely unsolvable problem or an unclimbable mountain or whatever, you're a piece of trash.
Yeah.
Fuck off and die, because I hate you, and you're a waste of human carbon.
For sure. And like we said, even if that was true, how do you explain the numerous witnesses who saw these bite marks appear before their very eyes?
Right.
And this would happen while under close observation. She was hardly ever alone. The prison doctor was even quoted saying that Clarita's injuries were, quote, the work of some unearthly being.
Oh, damn.
Some of these folks from the National Hospital were so determined to pin all of this on Clarita that they claimed she was making the marks herself with her mind.
With her mind?
Now, we here on Creep Street do believe in both demonic possession and the power of the mind to do incredible things. But if you're so rational that you can't accept demonic possession, how can you claim that Clarita is doing it all with her mind?
Yeah, that's just so... This is, once again, it's like, it's so fucking stupid. What do you think that she just is able to, like, collapse blood vessels in her body to create bruising? Just
Exactly.
without touching any part of herself or running up against anything? Or it's like...
Yeah.
What do you mean? Because you are an authority figure and you have the thought process of a kindergartner.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe that you are in charge of other people's well-being.
Right, for sure.
Like, oh my God. Once again, it's not hard to not think that someone can create bite marks on their own body with their mind. You are making this harder for yourself and like making loops and shit.
Yes.
By insinuating that. You're the problem.
But even with all we've mentioned, there was even more spooky shit going on. Here's another excerpt from Summerall's book.
One doctor accused the girl of putting on an act in order only to get publicity. Clarita gazed at the doctor. With her snake-like eyes, she said, "You will die." He didn't feel anything at the moment, but the following day, the doctor expired without even getting sick. He simply died. Fear struck the city when that news was spread about. The girl was not only a harlot, they said, she was also a witch who could speak curses upon human beings and they would die. The chief jailer had a confrontation with the girl. He had kicked her for something she had done wrong while rebelling against him. Clarita looked at the jailer in a cold, inhuman hate and said, "You will die." Within 4 days, the man was dead and buried, the second person to fall victim to her curse.
That rocks. I'm into this. Honestly, like, I know it's a demon that's doing it, and it's, like, not really Clarita, but, like, I wish it was Clarita to be like, you guys should die.
Also, you notice people then would even say, oh, well, she's a witch doing that. And it's like...
Like, what are you guys
What do you mean?
about?
That's as wild as thinking she's possessed by demons. Like, what? Why can you not be on her side for one goddamn second?
Right. I don't know. It just doesn't make any goddamn sense. I'm into it, though, honestly. Her just telling people they're going to die, and then they die.
Despite all the blowhards trying to blame whatever was happening to Clarita on some rational reason, it wasn't long until people began to whisper about the possibility of demonic possession. When Summerall had heard about these stories surrounding Clarita, he made his way to the Philippines to meet her in person. The first thing that was apparent upon his arrival was how terrified the staff and other inmates of the prison were. Like I said before, here you have this intimidating, hellish prison, and the most terrifying inmate in there is a 17-year-old girl. Summerall asked the staff to describe the entities that Clarita said was attacking her, and when they did, he became certain that they were dealing with a legitimate demonic possession. He was granted access to meet Clarita, and he prepared himself for what was to lie ahead. Summerall was about to go head-to-head with the entities plaguing her, and here is another excerpt from the book.
Who were these alien entities? The large one, Clarita said, was monster in size. He was a dark figure and very hairy. He had fangs that came down on each side of his mouth, plus a set of buck teeth all the way around. The doctors verified her description by the teeth marks on her body. Buck teeth solid all the way around the bite, rather than sharp teeth in the front. The smaller entity was almost like a dwarf. He would climb up her body to bite her upper torso. Both of these spirits liked to bite her where there was a lot of flesh, like the back of her leg, the back of her neck, the fleshy part of her upper arms. They would bite deep into her, leaving ugly, painful bruises. As Clarita was being led into the room, she looked at them and said nothing. But when she saw me, she screamed violently. "I hate you!" Instantly I inserted, "I know you hate me. I've come to cast you out." That was the beginning of the confrontation. There was a raging battle with the girl blaspheming God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Her eyes were burning coals of fire and full of hate. I commanded the evil spirits to loose her. After a 3-day confrontation with the devil in her, the miracle of God came upon her. She relaxed, smiled, and said, "He's gone."
For the record, one of my other sources claimed that the shorter entity was only about 2 feet tall and that it wore dark robes and had vampire teeth with big bulging eyes. So that was just to paint the picture of how the descriptions vary a bit.
Yeah. These two kind of remind me of Pain and Panic from Hercules/Greek mythology. You know, they don't really look like him, I don't think. I don't really know why I think that, but there's something there.
Yeah. After the end of the confrontation, the story and really Clarita sort of faded into obscurity. No one is really sure what happened to her after that. The story has been featured in various accounts such as Fate magazine and the popular book Stranger Than Science by Frank Edwards. And as is the case with many things, a lot has been added to this very real story over the years, so it's hard to differentiate what is real and what wasn't. Summerall's book is really the most comprehensive source there is out there. And the book is loaded with his musings on God and the devil, and not to mention a lot of tooting of his own horn.
Oh, a tutor. Okay.
Many think that he exaggerated many of the details of the story to help sell the book and boost his own ego. Lester Sumrall's book was published in 1954, the year following the incident involving Clarita.
Okay.
And it was relatively small, only at 120 pages in length. The book sold pretty well in certain circles and has been reprinted a few times, sometimes even in shorter form, and apparently with variations in the title as well. The book would go on to be a big part of his ministry later in his life. For example, Sumrall claimed to have been responsible for converting over 150,000 people in the Philippines to Catholicism after they were inspired by his help in saving Clarita. First of all, probably not a good move to claim that you were responsible, or at least partly responsible, for converting so many folks. But second of all, wasn't he a Protestant minister? Why would he be converting people to Catholicism?
Was he a Protestant minister?
That's what my source claimed. It said he was a Protestant pastor. I mean, I guess maybe that source could have been wrong or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe he switched over to Catholicism. Maybe during like the, process of this exorcism, it made him change, his tune about some things. But yeah, also it's kind of interesting too because I think the Philippines is already a mainly Catholic nation.
So maybe it was just a thing of like, well, it's the closest thing, or something. I don't know. Like I said, these sources could be conflicting. So
and that's okay.
So as we know, apparently one doctor who claimed Clarita was faking it died the next day, and another doctor apparently who doubted her suffering horrible bite wounds. Apparently, the moment these devils were cast out of her, the other doctor began getting bit.
Oh.
It was like they had hopped out of one and into another.
Weird.
But there are glaring issues surrounding Sumrall's book that I want to go ahead and read directly from one of my sources who called out the weird discrepancies in the book. And this is directly from my source.
First, Sumrall manages to tell the story of Villanueva's stay in jail and her subsequent exorcism with only minor mention of Mayor Laxon, who mostly only appears after the problems have been solved. In Sumrall's account, Dr. Mariano Lara is the key actor in the examinations of Villanueva instead, and one of the details of the story distributed worldwide that was most striking. That of Laxon describing how a bite mark appeared on Villanueva's hand under his own palm as he held her hand. It is retold as happening to a lackey of Dr. Lara's while Lara is watching. It should be noted, of course, that Sumrall mentions the names of many of the town's officials as being involved in the incident, people who were not mentioned in the international version of the account. But it almost seems like Sumrall is just name-dropping both to prove he knew who should be in charge and to distract from the most obvious missing name, Arsenio Laxon. Second, and a big problem to get past, is that I can't prove any of the news articles Sumrall extensively quotes in the start of the book actually exist. I have some feelers out to see if I can confirm or deny the existence of certain key articles that Sumrall's account relies on, but the simple truth is that anyone quoting these articles as evidence now only got them from Sumrall's book. I can find no one who has seen the original articles in their original newspapers, if they exist. This point may explain the third problem, which is the simple fact that Sumrall's account of Villanueva's story of her early imprisonment is radically different from the details of the internationally reported version of the account.
So,
okay,
this is a story that we know happened.
Mm-hmm.
But how exactly did it happen, we're never going to really know because the main source we have, we can't verify his source.
Right, yeah. These are tough. It's hard to really get some firm, irrefutable proof.
Right.
You know what I mean? In these kinds of things.
And as you know, on Creep Street, we're not one of those podcasts that tries to disprove anything. And that's certainly not what we're doing here. We're just highlighting that this is something real that happened.
Yeah.
But the details surrounding it, it's hard to really get stapled down. I mean, as you can tell, we got 5 different descriptions of these entities.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to tell. Obviously, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
and we believe it happened. We just don't know. We can't nail down the exact details. So if it sounds like we're trying to say this didn't happen or something, that is not at all the case. We're just calling out that some of the details are very hard to nail down.
And, and like, just to make it extra clear, this is normal for these kinds of cases, and it doesn't mean that they are lies or just, told for clout or for attention or whatever. Some of these things in the, I don't really know what you would even call it, but just because you can't prove something doesn't mean that it's not real. Sometimes it's just we're not there yet. We don't have the ability to record or to see it or to take a photo of it or whatever. That's okay, and that's a part of it. And yeah, this is a scary story. I hope that Clarita's life has been better.
Yes, and like we said, after all this, after she left the prison, we don't really know what happened to her, but I'll tell you what we do hope happened was that she had a completely different life than the one she knew.
For sure.
I hope she went on to be happy and healthy and started a family of her own in whatever capacity that might be. And I hope that everything she was denied in her youth, she was given later in life.
Yay.
But Maureen, that wraps us up for the Possession of Clarita Villanueva.
Oh my goodness gracious, Dylan. Whoa. Thank you so much for putting together such a great episode and taking us back to the Philippines.
Absolutely. Always fun to go back. Like we said, we love every single one of our listeners. And so when we see we have an audience building up in a certain part of the world, because when you start a podcast, you never know where it's going to hit.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It is funny because it's like, well, you'd expect the United States just because that's where we live.
Right.
But it was funny, before the podcast really took off here, it kind of started to take off in like the Philippines and stuff before it got like a bigger American audience, which I think is so cool.
I think so
and
too,
so
yeah.
we are forever grateful to our Philippines audience, and all of our audience, whether it's South Africa, the UK, Canada, Mexico. I mean, they're all over. Creep Street.
We're loving you.
Oh my God, this is, we're global. We're galactic. We're going galactic.
We are going galactic. Ever heard of the Milky Way?
That's right.
We're there.
We're citizens of it, folks. And let me tell you something.
What?
I got a list of names I wouldn't mind taking a trip to the mayor's office with.
Oh, okay. What do you... Go on.
Folks, give it on up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the finished face Via Lungfus, the Madman Marcus Hall, the vivacious Vicky McHugh, the tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the notorious Nicholas Barker, the terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the loathsome Johnny Love, the carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the killer stud Carl Staub, the fire starter Heather Carter, the conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the awfully awesome Annie, the murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the maniacal Laura Maynard, the vicious Karen Van Buren, the arch nemesis Aaron Bird, the sadistic Sergio Castillo, the rapscallion Ryan Crum, the beast Benjamin Huang, the devilish Chris Doucette, the psycho Sam, the electric Emily Zhong, the renegade Corey Ramos, the crazed Carlos, the antagonist Andrew Park, the monstrous Michaela Schur, the witchy wonder J.P. Weimer, the freaky Ben Forsyth, the barbaric Andrew Barry, and the mysterious Marcella.
Absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous. Thank you so much to our top tier over on Patreon. We are so grateful for you. Thank you for all that you do. But of course, thank you to all of our donors on Patreon, no matter what tier. And just thank all of you for listening today. We're so happy to have you with us. Please like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, leave us those 5 stars.
That's right.
Share us on social media, tell your friends about us, all that good stuff. It really does help the podcast, and you know what? We really, really appreciate it.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
A good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.